Today we are going to be talking about this, the little item in front of me here, which is the new RavenEye module from DJI. Now the RavenEye comes with the DJI RS2 as well as the RSC2 Pro kit, and it is also available as a standalone module as well. Now in this video what I'm going to do is actually concentrate on the RavenEye unit itself, give you guys an overview of it, its features, walk you through what it actually does, show you how to set it up on the RS2, but the process is the same for the other gimbals as well, talk about its compatibility, and then show you some of its features in action, including the wireless video transmission, the ability to use Force Mobile, as well as the Activetrack 3.0 as well. Now I will be releasing a separate video talking about the RS2 as well as the RSC2 as well later. Today's one is simply about the RavenEye unit itself because there's quite a lot to talk about in this one. Now, before we get into it, if you'd like to support the channel, please do consider hitting that subscribe button, give the video a like, and don't forget to hit the little bell as well. If you'd like to support us further, there are links to the DJI RavenEye, the RS2, as well as the RSC2 in the description of this video. They are affiliate links, but by you guys using them, am I able to keep making videos and buy products to be able to talk about. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get on with this video and let's take a closer look at the RavenEye unit itself. So to explain what RavenEye is, it is an all-new modular wireless video transmission system designed to be used with the new RS2 and RSC2 gimbals from DJI. It transmits your camera's video via HDMI to a compatible wireless smart device with the DJI Ronin app installed, and it also allows you to control your gimbal remotely as well. Taking a closer look at the detail, as I've said, it is a Wi-Fi HDMI transmitter that will transmit to a compatible smartphone or tablet with the Ronin app. It is compatible with both the RS2 and RSC2 for all features. That includes Activetrack, wireless video and gimbal control. You can use it with the Ronin S and SC, but it only works for wireless video transmission on those models. It also features the new Activetrack 3.0 on board, and whereas on the Ronin S and SC that feature was built into the gimbal, it's now been moved into the RavenEye module, and that means you no longer actually have to mount your smartphone on the top. You can actually simply use this to track via your camera's output. Now, because it is a separate module, it does clip onto the gimbal, but it does have a built-in 2970 mAh battery that allows for about 3.5 hours runtime. It supports both 2.4 and 5 GHz Wi-Fi and will give a range of up to 200 meters in FCC and 100 meters in CE. It transmits at 1080p 30 frames a second, and it has a cold shoe mount on board for connecting it to your gimbal. Taking a closer look at camera support, the RavenEye is designed to work with any camera really that has a HDMI output that can support 1080p, 25, 30, 50 and 60 frames a second. Now it uses a mini HDMI on the device itself, and DJI include a number of cables to connect it to your camera. Now it is worth noting that RavenEye only has a HDMI input and there is no pass-through integrated into this device. That means if you did want to use it with an external monitor, you would have to actually use a HDMI splitter before the RavenEye device itself. Now the unit also has USB-C connectivity for the RSS control, the gimbal input, as well as charging the battery as well. Now whilst the RavenEye is designed to be used with the RS and RSC2, it can be used as a standalone wireless video transmitter, but again it can only transmit to a compatible smart device with the Ronin app, but you can use it as a standalone device because it has its built-in battery and it will take those HDMI input signals. So the next thing we're going to do in this video is actually walk you through setting up the RavenEye on the RS2 with my GH5. Now, as I have already said, it is compatible with the RS2 and RSC2 with all functionality, that is wireless video transmission, remote control, as well as the ability to use Activetrack 3.0. You can use it with the original Ronin S and the Ronin SC, but you will only have the wireless video functionality. You won't have any of the control or Activetrack 3.0 options. Now, to set it up, it is fairly straightforward. All we need to do first of all is take our camera, and as I said, I'm doing this with the GH5, but the process will be the same for pretty much all of them. I'm going to mount it on to the RS2, and I've already pre-balanced this. Now, the thing to take into account is when you are balancing this with the RavenEye, it is going to be different than using it without it, and you will need to adjust the position of the gimbal if you're going to swap between using it with or without, or you can actually just simply put that on even if you're not going to use it to keep the weight balance correct. Now, on the bottom of the gimbal itself, there is a slot in position for mounting the RavenEye unit with that cold shoe mount, and it simply goes in onto the top, and then you give it a nice lock down, and it locks in place underneath, ready to go. Now, you can, with the antennas, fold them back that way, but my advice would be when you are using the RavenEye is to have the antennas outwards. That way you're going to get the best possible range. You can shift them into all sorts of directions as well. You can put them that way too. It's just making sure that they're not going to bind on anything, and you're not going to get any problems with them actually locking the gimbal up and tapping the arms and things like that. Now, there are a few cables. The first thing you're going to want to do is plug in the RavenEye to the gimbal itself. Now, there are a couple of cables to do that. There is a long and short USB-C cable in with the Pro kit as well. If you buy it as part of the RS2 or RSC2 Pro kit, they'll give you a load of cables, but for me it is USB-C and USB-C. We have a long one and a short one. The short one goes from the gimbal to the RavenEye unit. Now, the connection for it is actually the bottom connection on the gimbal. There are three, and the bottom one is the one for the connection for the RavenEye unit. So we simply plug the cable into the bottom one like that, and we're then going to plug it in to the port on the back of the RavenEye under here. And then that is the RS cable to allow the RavenEye to communicate with the gimbal itself. We're then going to take our HDMI connector. Now, with the GH5, it's a full-size HDMI, but again, they do give you various HDMI cables in the kit to use as well. The RavenEye has a mini HDMI input, so we're going to want the one which is full HDMI to mini HDMI, that one there. So what we're going to do is just pop them down. We're going to plug him into the side of the RavenEye unit, and then we're going to fold him up over into the side of the GH5, so that's incorrectly there. And then the final cable is the communication cable to allow your gimbal to talk to your camera. Now, I'm going to use the longer USB-C for this one, and it goes from the gimbal to the camera for the GH5. You don't actually go from the RavenEye unit to the camera. So again, we're going to go into the top port for that one, and it does have a little label on it to show that it is camera. We're going to bring him around, and we're going to plug him in to the side like that. Now, that is all of the cable connections done on the gimbal. Now, there are a few things you do need to be aware of. Now, this is dependent on your camera as well. You may not have the ability to actually view the screen on the back of the camera whilst using the RavenEye unit, whilst it's connected to the gimbal. It is entirely down to the firmware on your camera, what features it allows, depending on what connection you're doing. Usually when using HDMI output, you can still have the screen on, but when you do have that communication connection, which is using the PC tether on the GH5, it will turn the back display off with the HDMI output enabled, so that is something to be aware of. So we've got our cables on. The next thing we're going to do is turn the gimbal on itself. Wait for that to actually power up. Just rotate it round, and I'm then going to turn the RavenEye unit on from the back with the little power button down here. Now, just something to be aware of is the RavenEye, as I've already said, has a built-in battery that will charge off USB-C. When the RavenEye is turned off, it will actually start charging from the gimbal itself. So you can charge it directly from the gimbal in use, or you can charge it on any suitable USB-C charger independently. It doesn't come with a power brick or a USB charger itself. It is something you will have to have. Even the gimbal doesn't come with one in the box, but you can charge the RavenEye from the gimbal, but you can also do it separately. But when it is turned off, you will see it start to charge, but it doesn't charge when it's turned on and in use. So that is something to take into account. So if you were having a full day of using it, it isn't powered from the gimbal, you do need to make sure that there's battery life in it already. So we're going to turn the RavenEye unit on. Just press the button, wait for the lights to flash and get in place. Just turn it so you can see it there. And then I'm going to turn the camera on. Now the RavenEye unit uses Wi-Fi to connect between the unit and your smart device. The Ronin, or the RS2, uses Bluetooth. So when you are using your RS2 on its own without RavenEye fitted, your connection between the RS2 and your smart device or phone is Bluetooth. That allows you to control the gimbal settings. It allows you to actually use features like the Force Mobile, the track modes, but you do not get wireless video. You only get wireless video when you have the RavenEye connected, and then the connection is actually Wi-Fi from the RavenEye and not Bluetooth. And they in fact remind you to turn Bluetooth off on your phone because it can have an effect on the range of the system. So it is worth remembering that when you're using it without RavenEye, it's just Bluetooth. When you're using RavenEye, it's Wi-Fi. Now what we're going to do is open the RavenEye app. Now I'm just going to tell my phone just to screen record first so I can show you guys what I'm doing. The first thing we need to do is actually make sure that we are connected to the Wi-Fi. So you're going to need to go into your phone's Wi-Fi settings and look for the RavenEye to come up on the Wi-Fi on the screen. As you can see, mine's already connected and it's come on at the top. On the back of the RavenEye unit, it actually has the Wi-Fi details. So for the first time using it, you will need to connect to it just like connecting to any normal Wi-Fi access point. When you have connected, you can then open the Ronin app, and it will then jump straight in to the screen showing the RavenEye is connected. Now mine has come up on the screen now. Let me just spin it around. I just want to see what's going on. I just need to take it off PC tether. And now on the screen, I've got my wireless video showing up on my app as I'm rotating it around. Now, as you can see, it is a replica of what is on the display. Now I'm going to put this up in the corner so you can actually see what I'm seeing as well. Let's just get it off me there, no one needs to see that. Now just to give you an idea of the kind of latency involved, I'm just going to, if I move myself out of the way and you guys can see over that way for the 3D printer. If I just snap my fingers, I will synchronize this so it is correct. That is the kind of latency that you do get with the RavenEye system. There is a little bit of latency there. It's not massive, but there is a tad there available. Let's spin it round past all the lights and go back around to that way over there. So there is a little bit of latency visible when it is in use, but it isn't massive amount, but it is there and it is something to be aware of. Now, when you're in the app, you still have all of the functions available to you within the normal Ronin app. So if I actually click back and back out of that, we'll then get back up to the normal screen that we're used to seeing. With the Ronin, you can see we've got the create, the balance, the motor parameters, and then if we want to go back into the camera view, we just simply click the RavenEye at the bottom and it will click in. Now, around the screen, looking around, what we've got on the left-hand side here, we've got this little icon which allows you to recenter the gimbal to make sure that it's pointing straight, just like using the trigger on the front. This button here will allow us to do things like Force Mobile or turn on the virtual joystick on the screen. So for instance, if we turn on Force Mobile, and as I move my smartphone now, you can see that the gimbal actually tracks my phone. And again, this is controlling it through the RavenEye module directly. We can then turn that off, use the virtual joystick if we want to as well. And again, that puts the little joysticks down the bottom so you can control them with your on-screen fingers. It's a bit harder than it actually looks. There we go, bringing it back around over there. We can turn that off. And then you've got all the settings for them listed under there as well. Going down to the bottom corner, it brings up this little menu at the bottom, which gives us a number of little options. You've got the option to put on zebras to be able to look at the overexposed areas. You've got color palettes which allow you to turn on them so you can see how things are. You've then got your focus peaking option within the RavenEye as well, so it allows you to actually have that focus peaking enable, and I've got this lens in manual at the moment, so if I adjust it, you can see that focus peaking kicking in and out. You've got the option to upload LUTs, so you can actually either choose a LUT from the ones built in, or upload a LUT onto it to allow you to actually use your camera in S-Log and all of that lot and be able to actually have the representation obviously on the image correct. Click OK on that. And then we've got some color filter options as well, which you can scroll through depending on what you want to see. And then the little bit in the corner puts it down the bottom. Moving up into the top corner, you can see we've got the RavenEye settings, and you've got the option to turn the RavenEye Assistant on and off, which is that bit at the bottom. You've got the guided frames, so we can turn none, 64, just like you would expect on a normal camera. We've then got the aspect markers, which is very handy as well if you want to turn things like that on. Let's turn them back off. We have our safety zone marker as well, which again is for your cropping. Oh, I'll turn that back off. Focus peaking threshold, so you can actually adjust what the threshold is for the focus peaking. So if I actually turn that back on and then go back into the settings, you can see you can actually adjust the threshold of the focus peaking, so how much you want it actually to show through. Put it back to there. We've then got our center marker, which we can just turn the center point on and off on the screen. We've then got our color for that as well, marker width. We've got the shutter, which is the option to record video both on your SD card on your camera and on your smart device. So just like DJI drones, you can actually record the video directly on the aircraft, but have a cache of that video on your device for quick playback and viewing and adjusting later. So we can set it to either shoot, cache, shoot and cache, and it then has an option of storing how much space you want it to actually use. Then below that you've got Wi-Fi settings, which allows you to modify the password and the frequency. Again, both 2.4 and 5 gigs available. And then you've just got the about screen, which gives us information on the serial number and firmware and all of the usual stuff like that. Let's just turn focus peaking off. Then down the side, we've got the option to change between stills and video, just like a DJI drone. So I can do that, tell it to take a still shot or do that, tell it to record. And as I've not got an SD card in this at the moment, it's going to record just on my phone a second, and I'll show you that on the playback of the cache as well. And then in the bottom, we've got our playback for the video, which is stored on the device. Now, it doesn't store the video in the camera roll directly. It stores it in the device, and you can then transfer it to the camera roll if you want to. And when I mean store it in the device, I mean it stores it in the DJI Ronin app, and you can then export it if you want to. You can see that's the bit I've done there. It's upside down for some reason because I'm holding the phone a certain way. There we go. It's woke up now. And it shows them down there, and you can see I've done some other ones as I was testing some stuff on it earlier. Then finally at the bottom of the screen, you can see that we have some options for adjusting the settings on the camera itself. We can adjust the aperture, the frame rate and the ISO as well. So we can do that directly from within the app, and that will change the settings directly on your camera as long as it is compatible with the connection within your Ronin. And we can do all of those settings just like we would expect, as we would be able to do in the normal Ronin app. Now that is the special functionality for the RavenEye. You can also see in the top corner is the battery level as well, showing 92%, which is currently what it's showing at too. But as I said, that is the special features with the RavenEye device compared to the Ronin. As I have already said, you can jump straight back into the Ronin RS2 app, or the Ronin app for the RS2, and do all of the usual stuff. So I can go into Create, do all the usual stuff, Force Mobile. Again, I can go into it this way. So I can say enable and use it directly from in here, but you can also do it from within that video transmission screen as well. Now, depending on what camera you're using will depend on what features are available. It will depend if you can actually use it with the shutter control and everything like that. But as long as your camera's got HDMI output, you will be able to get the wireless video. Now, the one thing I haven't talked about yet is the Activetrack 3.0, because that is one of the major features of the RS2 alongside RavenEye. And whereas on the original Ronin S and the Ronin SC, you had to mount your camera on the top of the camera to be your phone on the top of the camera to be able to actually use Activetrack, they've now allowed you to actually do it directly through this image transmission system. And the way this works is as follows. It works exactly the same as the DJI drones. So what I'm just going to do is pop that there a second. I'm going to just move back a little bit so it's got me in frame. And what I'm going to do is draw a box on the screen around me, highlighting me as a person, and then the Activetrack has kicked in. Now you can see in the bottom left hand corner there's an Activetrack speed setting available as well, and this is the sensitivity of the Activetrack. So just to give you an idea, I'm just going to wheel my chair over to here, and as you can see the gimbal is actually following me over to the side. As you can see on the phone screen, it's actually following me around as I'm moving. Now I've got this on the setting 7. I can drop it right up to setting 30, and now you will see that it is a lot more active. If I actually stand up and move it around, it will actually follow me right around. And if I move around here, sorry, I've come off screen. On the phone screen, you can see I've come around to this camera here. Hello. And then I can walk back around here, and the Activetrack will follow me and keep me in screen. Now in 30, it is very jerky. It is all over the place. For the smoothest footage, you know, 7, 6, that area there, and I found that tends to give the smoothest footage, but it is a lot slower to react. Let's just get it up to 10. It's probably a bit faster on 10. Just, yeah, you can see it's keeping me there. Moving around here. Oh, I moved a bit quick for it. Now again, depending on how fast you've got it will depend on how fast it's able to react to your movement. So you do need to take that into account. So for instance, if I put it in 30 and move over here, it will react very fast. As you can see me moving around, it will actually find me. However, when you drop it down lower, it will actually slow it down and not react quite as fast. Now I've done quite a lot of testing with this, and what I have found is this. It tries to keep you as the subject in the position you were in when you selected the Activetrack box. Now if you look there, for instance, it's not centered on me, it's actually to the side, and that is because I wasn't centered when I reset it up. Now if I just level it back up and I put myself straight in the shot and then draw the little box around me, it will now try to keep me centered in that, and actually always try to keep me in the center of the screen at all times, or the center of view, rather than off to the side. But I have noticed it will move around a little bit when I'm doing it. Now this is just a basic demo of the Activetrack in the workshop. It is wet, it is cold, and it is dark outside at the moment, so I can't take it out and about, but I will actually add a bit onto this before the end of the video just to show you it as well. I'll possibly put that on my RS2 review video rather than this one specifically, but it will do it there. But also, if I then cancel it and move to the side and keep myself to the side, it will then aim to keep me there. So when I move around, it'll aim to put me back into that side part of the frame, as you can see there. So if I move around over here, again, it's going to keep me on that very edge of the frame, because that's where I was when the Activetrack originally was selected on the screen. And again, if I move back down to here, it's put me in exactly the same place I was when I originally set it up.
So that is the main Activetrack feature. Now I'm just trying to figure out which camera I should be actually looking at here actually. So let's just turn that off. So that is the basics of Activetrack. It works very well overall. It does need some tweaking though, in the sense of you need to set it up to suit your own needs. One of the downsides to it though, using both RavenEye and the Activetrack, is the fact that there is no HDMI pass-through on this. So if you did want to be able to actually feed that HDMI out of the RavenEye into something else, you're going to need to look at something like a HDMI splitter or something to be able to split that feed between the RavenEye and your external video source. So that is something to take into account as a downside to this system, is that when you are using that HDMI, you can't use it with an external monitor and you can't use it with anything else unless the device you've got has got a pass through, and then you could pass through the device then into the gimbal. But I've already seen people starting to put HDMI splitters on these. I've already seen some interesting combinations of stuff happening on that as well. Now that is pretty much it. I will be doing a couple of other videos on the RS2, possibly the RS2, as well as the RavenEye unit as well. I will also do a setup with my Sony camera as well, which is this one I'm recording this video on, but the process is exactly the same. You just simply choose the cable you need rather than anything else, and make sure that you've got the settings for your specific camera correct as per the Ronin. Now, one other thing I just wanted to mention around Activetrack is the ability to actually do it via the gimbal itself, because not only can you do it via the phone, if you didn't want to have your phone connected, you can actually do it via the gimbal screen. There's a nice little feature that if you swipe down with the RavenEye module connected, you will see that on the little color screen, you can see the video showing up, and you can actually see what you're doing. But you can also use Activetrack as well, and you can do it by quickly tapping the trigger on the front of the gimbal. So if I just turn that around there so you guys can see and put myself in view, if I do a single tap on the trigger, the Activetrack, you can see the boxes come up on my phone and it's actually tracking me. So you're able to use Activetrack without actually using the phone itself. And again, to disable it, simple tap, and it will actually cancel the Activetrack. So whilst the phone does give you the most functionality, you can actually do it without a device connected and do it on this screen as well. And then you can just flip up and do it that way. Now that is pretty much it for this video. I will be making a number of other videos on the RavenEye, the RS2, and possibly the RS2 as well. Depending on what your camera is, the overall setup is basically the same. As I've said though, when you do balance it with a RavenEye on, you will have to leave it on, or you'll have to readjust the gimbal to counteract the weight when you're not using it. But the advantage to leaving it on is when you turn the RavenEye unit off, it will begin to charge and it will be ready to use the next time. But do remember, when you are charging it, it is then draining battery from the RS2 itself. Now, if you'd like to support the channel, please do check out the links in the description of this video. There is a link to the RS2, the RavenEye, as well as the RS2 as well. It is only by you guys using those links am I able to keep buying products like this to be able to talk to you about. Also, if you are new here and this video is the first time you've watched my channel, please do consider hitting that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the little bell as well, and that way you'll get updates on any new videos that I release in the future too. As I've said, this is the first in a few videos I will be doing on the new gimbal, so please do hit the subscribe button to make sure you do get updates when they come out as well. Anyway, that's it for this one. I hope the information in it has been useful. Thank you for watching. Please do stay safe, and I will release another video on this system very soon.